Yeah, I think my life's mission right now, where I want to focus at this point of time, is to see how we can further Swami's mission. Swami's physical frame is not there anymore, but as devotees, I think it's very important that we all kind of come together and support in whatever way some of these Swami's institutions, the hospital, the educational institutions.
We're talking specifically
Specifically
here.
the hospitals.
Super specialty hospitals
Yep.
that Baba created
Yep.
in Puttaparthi
Yep.
and Bangalore.
Yeah, they are all subjected to the same pay commission, the inflation. See, that's the supply, right?
Mhm.
And the demand side, there's always growth, like a lot of poor people that needs to be served. From the supply side, there's still a lot of expenses that will have to be incurred. I mean, there's inflation going at 10 to 13%. So obviously, the financial model will need lot more input. And Swami has always said that, I have never gone and asked for money from anybody for any of this. But that's Swami. But right now, I think as devotees, we need to come together and help in whatever way we can to further this mission. Yeah, I think Baba, the physical form being absent shouldn't be a deterrent. It's, if at all, I think it's more like a coming from the devotees end and not from either the trust or the institution itself. What are we doing together as devotees to keep this alive, sustainable, and grow? I think that's a question that every devotee has to have it planted in their heart. And all I'm trying to see is if I can take the lead and put together, give some shape to that. Right now we are only talking, so we need to almost put some shape together, form a structure so that people can participate in it.
Ramesh Neelakantan is not afraid to ask the question, how will holy man Sri Satya Sai Baba's impressive humanitarian institutions carry on and thrive now that Sai Baba's physical form is no longer here? Neelakantan, an American devotee, has some answers. Welcome to Souljourns. This interview was recorded in Destin, Florida, in the summer of 2013.
Ramesh, welcome to Souljourns.
Thank you.
Briefly, how did you come to Baba?
How did I come to Baba? It was about 13 years ago, year 2000. I had my own business. And at one point of time, I was finding it very difficult to meet the payroll for my employees. I had only enough cash to cover for 2 weeks.
I see.
And I was obviously distressed. And I went to Raleigh during that was Memorial Day weekend. So I spent some time with my sister-in-law and brother-in-law there. And obviously I looked distressed. And then he said, "Hey, you look really distressed. What's going on?" Then I shared it with him what's going on with my life, with my business. And he said, "You know what, come, there's a bhajan here going on." And that was a Sunday. It's May 28th, 2000. In fact, I remember the date as well. And so we got back from Raleigh after attending the bhajans. That Thursday, there was a wire transfer in my bank account for $153,000. And we did not know where it came from.
You're an accountant.
I'm not an accountant, though I work for an accounting firm now, but I'm not an accountant. But that
You're a professional when it comes to...
But I asked my CFO, where did this money come from? And he said, "No, we do not know. We do not know where. We cannot trace it." And I told him, "Don't touch it for the next 2 to 3 weeks till we know that it's legitimate and all that." Then after 2 to 3 weeks, then it did come from our lawyers, where we had some money kept in the escrow account. But I was 100% sure we had emptied everything from the escrow shop. I said, "Don't open it up. We will leave it. Maybe it's a divine help." We got it, and then we ran with the business for the next few more months.
So, because you knew you had that security, that collateral that you could turn to if you needed to.
Yeah, so instead of 2 weeks paycheck, we were able to go through for a lot more.
So it bought you the time in order to presumably keep the business going.
Exactly.
And that could only be seen by you as a windfall?
It was definitely, there was a coincidence between me being pulled into the Sai bhajans
so
that Sunday
the dots
and
now.
on a Thursday. So I connected those two and said, this probably some divine help. And then we started going to the center. Then slowly kind of we could, and at the time, at that point I was very intrigued, who is Sai Baba? And we started going to bhajans in the Atlanta center and started reading a lot of Swami's literature, and they said, this is who he is.
You know, it's really an opportune time to ask you a question that I think a lot of people want to know, and that is for a relative newcomer to Sai Baba's side, how people get started. There's so much confusion out there. There's so much information, not just about Baba, but about all sorts of spiritual paths that anybody could be on. When is it that you finally realized that, A, you had an interest in pursuing more of a spiritual path, and B, it would be the path of Sai Baba?
It was not like, I think there is a saying that you don't choose the divine, that the divine chooses you. But one thing is certain, right from my childhood, I was always wondering, where did I come from? I kind of was almost sure I didn't belong here. So where did I come from? That question always has been nagging, even though I didn't pursue it very actively. And when I opened this one of Swami's literature, I said, I found my good one. A lot of people ask, what is it that you read there? I said, it's for you to ask yourself and get the answer. I'm not going to give it to you.
Good response, because that's, I think, people know when they're on a path. They may not know the object of the path or what the destiny looks like, but in my opinion, a lot of people recognize the hunger on the path.
True.
So when you grow up asking, as I did, who am I? What's it all about? Why am I here?
What is this going on? And
yeah,
and you know, and the answer comes.
And you start to get somebody, some way showers, people pointing you in the right direction. Then you can start literally putting one and one together and coming
exactly.
up with the right
It's almost like lighting a fire, as they call it. When you switch on the light, the darkness goes. It's like an aha moment that happens, and it was, and I never turned back after that.
Well, that aha moment seemed to have been preceded by almost $150,000 coming into your life at the time when you most critically needed it.
At the lowest point.
At the lowest point.
I mean, imagine you're responsible for some 20+ employees, and frankly, I do not know how I got myself into that situation.
Well, it happens.
It just happened. I mean, I said, and then okay, this is the divine way of doing stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and a couple of just real brief questions about how you have sustained this interest since then. I think you told me 13 years or so.
It's 13 years.
And this, again, can be useful to anybody who's new to the path. And we have people watching Souljourns from all over the world for whom Baba is a brand new experience. How does one go about then nurturing that budding curiosity about those questions you mentioned earlier? Who are you and why are you here? What's your purpose?
Ironically, not many people ask that question. You will be surprised. People are so caught up with what's going on in the world because it's a distraction. And for some reason, we get accepted on the distraction. So we don't go one level deeper and ask where this is all is coming from. But to me, it's so logical. I mean, what is this going on? I always tell people that the sun, the earth is revolving at 1,500 kilometers per hour, and it is moving around the sun at 100,000 kilometers. This is Swami somewhere in Sanatana Saradi I read. I mean, so there is a bigger thing that's happening, and yet you don't feel affected by any of this movement. So who is making all this happening, and what is your role in all this? It's almost like we have to ask that question. But it has to be a little more deeper. It has to be a nagging question. It cannot be a superficial question.
Yeah.
And then the answer comes.
My son is he may not agree with me, but I think he's a budding spiritual enthusiast. He's got lots of curiosity too. And he turned 36 and he said, Dad, you know, I've done a lot of soul searching and a lot of travel. And I said, well, what do you mean you've done a lot of travel? You live in LA and I know you've been out of the country a couple of times, but what do you mean? He says, well, I've traveled around the sun 36 times already. You know? And I thought, yeah, that qualifies. You are a world-class traveler. And I think it's just the awareness. It's when the awareness kicks in that we start to feel this curiosity arise in us about these questions.
But it's more almost like a light comes in and then the darkness goes. It's that simple. I think it's actually that simple. Well, and then there is a sustainability component to that. After that, your life takes a totally different turn.
You led right into my
totally different turn.
My next question, and that is, if somebody were standing here and they said, Ramesh is telling an interesting story, Ted, why don't you ask him how this path of 13 years has transformed his life, or if it has transformed his life in any way, how would you respond?
I think the biggest thing for me is I'm able to, I think the love component I'm able to expand to all of humanity and all of the world. I think that's the transformation Swami has made. In the early days, the love all, serve all used to be a very mechanical statement. But as the experiences tell you, it's more like a living reality, and you can feel it in your heart.
I am so
that's
glad.
It's a very, when I the first year, let's say year 1, love all, serve all, help our, hurt never. Yeah, those are good moral. Those are like good moral kind of statements, right? I mean, it could be any corporate motto. I'm sure it's there in Hard Rock Cafe. That's a love all, serve all motto. But
you're here in Destin, Florida, and if you were to drive 15 minutes down this way, you would see love all, serve all. And on the other side of the wall of the Hard Rock Cafe, in huge letters, all is one.
Yes. Yes, yes.
But the love all, serve all is the point you're talking about. And you feel it so much that you volunteered it just now as one of the big ways in which you've been transformed.
Exactly, exactly. And I also say that for people who are struggling with it, you start to look at it back ways. You look at like hurt never first, help over then, serve all, then love comes automatically.
Love comes automatically. Even when we got somebody rattling all the pots and pans in the background here, love still fills the air in this interview. A real quick aside here, because there's a Swami in town here in Fort Walton Beach with a nice ashram, and he follows the path of Swami Rama, and it's fairly intellectually driven, wise man, lots of information, and I know some people who belong to it who are learning a whole lot. But when I mentioned in conversation about Sai Baba, the love component, it was almost as if that was new territory. There's information, and then there's love. And they expressed to me the surprise at love. You mean that's the path to love as well? When it sounds like they're receiving the benefits of new information, and I'm reminded of the Baba phrase, it's so compelling, not information, but transformation. And the transformation implies the love component, which, much to my surprise, isn't always available.
Yeah. See, if you think about it, the self-preservation instinct is very natural in the moment you have as an individual, you identify yourself as an individual, there is this self-preservation instinct that kicks in. But when you say love all, that self-preservation embraces all, embraces everybody. So I include you as part of me.
Yeah.
So when you have that, like how no different than how a mother includes the child as part of her.
Yeah.
It's always, why is the mother-child instinct is so powerful? Because the mother always feels the child as part of herself.
Yeah.
That's why Swami's love, they say it's like 1,000 mothers, is because it's all embraces. And you also, you can feel it, that you are also expanding as you go through this journey with Swami.
Yeah. And those of us who are men might have a little more difficulty learning that lesson because we don't have the benefit of such an experience, such an intimate, emotional, physical, loving experience with our own offspring.
True, true, true.
Before we get to talking about one of my favorite subjects when you go to Puttaparthi, which is the super specialty hospital, any other last point you'd like to mention about what you've gleaned along the path of 13 years of where your whole perspective has been adjusted in a new direction because of this teacher, Sri Satya Sai Baba, that you would like to contribute right now?
Yeah, I think my life's mission right now, where I want to focus at this point of time, is to see how we can further Swami's mission. Swami's physical frame is not there anymore, but as devotees, I think it's very important that we all kind of come together and support in whatever way some of these Swami's institutions, the hospital, the educational institutions, and working in the corporate life and doing a lot of financial modeling. I can say that these services are offered free to the people, to really the poor of the poor. But that is from the demand side. From the supply side, there's still a lot of expenses that will have to be incurred. I mean, there's inflation going at 10 to 13%. In all the financial models we use for India, it's like anywhere from 10 to 11%.
We're talking specifically
here. The hospitals.
Super specialty hospitals that Baba created in Puttaparthi and Bangalore.
Yeah, they are all subjected to the same pay commission, the inflation. See, that's the supply, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the demand side, there's always growth, like a lot of poor people that needs to be served. So obviously, the financial model will need lot more input. And Swami has always said that, you know, I have never gone and asked for money from anybody for any of this, but that's Swami. But right now, I think as devotees, we need to come together and help in whatever way we can to further this mission.
I want to be very concrete about this, very black and white. How does that happen? How do you see that happening?
It has to be almost like a volunteer-driven effort, okay? And I have been kind of thinking about it in the last 3 to 5 months and talking to a lot of folks. One possibility is to have a trust that is in parallel in different regions. And again, we have not spent much thought on how the regulations and the taxation are all going to work, but it's almost important that we kind of have this mechanism where not just the Sai devotees, even the non-Sai devotees also can participate in this mission. Because at the end of the day, this is Swami's hospital, but it's for the world.
It's 100% benefiting those.
It's benefiting the poor, and it's a model that others can also replicate, right? So I think so that's the kind of thing we have been focusing on and trying to kind of how to put together in such a way that it is sustainable. I think the sustainability is the key, and how do you grow it?
Yeah. And in this case, the sustainability has been working out, as you say, because when Swami was here in the physical form, although nobody ever put their hand out for money from the Sai organization, including Sai Baba.
Correct.
Funding came anyway, which isn't always an easy thing. You have to know how to do that because the trust, Baba in particular, was very particular about who any funds would ever be accepted from. And that's the idea in too many people's minds is that goes on today, and so many people who otherwise might be in a position of wanting to support wonderful seva projects of the Sai Baba Trust don't even know how to begin to do that. So maybe this conversation can serve as an opening volley of future ways of explaining in more concrete terminology down the road how such a structure that you're envisioning might come into place, and people can actually learn then how to make contributions.
The current thought process is to kind of establish a kind of a trust. At least we want to start in the U.S. To establish a trust. At the same time, we want to connect with the Sai centers and outline in a very, very concrete way how this is all going to kind of function and how we all have to and it's going to be also be transparent. You know, we want to make it as transparent as possible. But the key is to kind of a movement. This has got to be more like a movement so that everybody can participate. Right now, people can participate by going to a center, attending a devotional program, and then you come out of it. But how do you know that there's going to be a need? And it may happen very well in the next 2 to 3 years. Because if you look at the inflation, that's not, so the inflation is going to go. The costs are going to go. That's not going to stop. And the demand for the services are also going to go. If you do the math, then the contributions need to be increased. It's that simple. But then it has to be a volunteer-driven event. It cannot be.
Sai Baba's physical form is no longer here, for one thing. The magnet that attracted so much universal appeal still attracts a certain amount of appeal, but not enough to sustain these projects beyond his physical form.
Yeah. But if you think about it, the guru is not the physical form. The guru is a form of energy too.
Yes.
And the energy stays.
Glad you said that.
Even if the form is not there.
Yeah.
So as long as you're connected deeply to the guru, I think that will continue. But this I want to take it a little more larger than just the devotees, because I just want to take the corporate. That's the kind of thing that I want to do so that they can be a part of this.
Boy, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because corporate organizational know-how can really contribute to the success of any organization, large or small, if people only know to tap into it.
Exactly. So if you look at the corporate, I mean, you can read any Wall Street Journal or any other financial magazines. The corporates are flush with cash. There's a lot of cash. There's no debt for money. You know, there's a lot of money going in. And also there's this whole corporate social responsibility, and people do want to invest wisely. But there is still a disconnect between what we do as an organization and to some of the more popular organization like the Bill Gates and the Melinda Gates organization. They're doing their own work more on the healthcare. I think there has to be a connect. We almost have to bridge the gap between some of these foundations and to what Swami's.
Very briefly, without going into detail, I was personally involved in the project long before I knew about Sai Baba, with a shelter for homeless families, homeless, jobless families. And it was one of my tasks, because I was prominent in my community, being in the media, to go out and rap on the door of CEOs of corporations. Stouffer's leaps to mind. Its world headquarters is in Cleveland, Ohio. Rapped on the door, got an appointment with the CEO, and walked out 30 minutes later with a check for $50,000.
Wow.
That sustained one unit that was being transformed in this old building. And it's not because I was able to do it. It was because they were looking for viable places to make their contributions to. And if organizations aren't aware of hospitals that serve the free around the world, how could they be expected to contribute to it? I'm only saying this because I want to piggyback on what you started here. It seems to me there must be hundreds, if not thousands, of Sai devotees around the world. Doctors, nurses, volunteers, save-a-dolls who have donated their time to work in these hospitals, and even volunteers who are just devotees who have no experience with the hospitals, who might be able in their communities to take it upon themselves to approach organizations for financial support to sustain these hospitals.
Yes, I think, but there has to be a vehicle and a mechanism that, and again, in Swami always said, where there is money, it could tend to be misused. So we want to make sure that those kind of things do not happen. So it has to be done in a careful way, but it's imperative that it has to be done, because that's the ground reality.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen otherwise.
Well, it seems to me your expertise and the expertise that coming from other people, like-minded people like yourselves, would be the gatekeepers, would be responsible to come up with that mechanism to make sure that every penny raised, every rupee raised, is used conscientiously.
Absolutely. And this will be a good interface between those organizations that are not exposed to Swami or Swami's teachings or Swami's legacy. So this would be a very good vehicle to do that.
Well, I think it's not just a way to get other people involved, but you touched it for just a brief second, to even replicate such an idea. Let's say the local Lions group here in northern Florida said, yeah, we'd like to invest in something like that because we've never heard of such a thing before. Hospitals, super specialty hospitals, for free. You just never know when an organization is going to say, we're not Sai Baba devotees, we don't know Sai Baba, but we support their program and we'd like to see others start similar programs.
Exactly. So they can use this model to replicate this elsewhere too, in other places. But the thing is this, there is almost nothing is free. Somebody is funding it, right? The recipient, it's free for the recipient, but the check has to be picked up by somebody else, always, right? That's the way it is. So all we are saying is that how to kind of make sure there is a sustainable corpus, and that's a good size that can support it for a long term, to kind of offset inflation, to manage the growth of the demand. So we need to have that model in place. Have to have.
Yeah, it's like the large foundations in this country, whether they're regional or national, they have to have that nut. They have to have that body of that corpus, as you call it, of funding that can grow to spawn the funds from which organizations.
Exactly.
And in a way, devotees today are left with rewriting the rule book, because Baba's guidance, though it's still here, is no longer here in his physical form. And they have to take the initiative to do this on their own.
Yeah, I think Baba, the physical form being absent shouldn't be a deterrent. It's, if at all, I think it's more like a coming from the devotee's end and not from either the trust or the institution itself. What are we doing together as devotees to keep this alive, sustainable, and grow? I think that's a question that every devotee has to have it planted in their heart. And all I'm trying to say is, if I can take the lead and put together, give some shape to that. Right now we are only talking, so we need to almost put some shape together, form a structure, so that people can participate in it.
Well, that's a great idea. Probably premature to ask for any website or email address or resource that a person interested might be able to turn to, other than Dr. Chaudhry Valetti, who's the director of the hospital in Puttaparthi, might be that person. Might
Exactly.
Be the resource.
Right now, I think it should be Dr. Chaudhry.
So I think we'll direct inquiries there
Yeah.
for now until more is revealed as the ball gets pushed down the road a little further.
Yes, yes.
Ramesh, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation about a question not only on my mind, but I think on the minds of a lot of serious devotees who want to see the true assets started by Sri Satya Sai Baba live on and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sai Ram.
Yeah.